Hi, everyone. It's Mr. Vallejo. Welcome to Science Class. Today, we are taking a look at biomes. So let's get going on that. All right. What is a biome, you may ask? Well, a biome is, if you can see the bulleted phrase, it's a global land area that has a particular temperature and precipitation pattern. Typically, this is how we represent it on a graph like this. You can see on the x-axis, you can see temperature as it goes from really low to really high, and then precipitation, rain, fog, all that stuff. Snow goes from 0 to about 450 centimeters per year. 450 centimeters per year, yeah, that's a tropical rainforest. You may have guessed. Also quite warm in a tropical rainforest, as you can see over here. So that's what this graph does. It gives us areas where we expect certain climax communities to exist because you have the different temperature and precipitation patterns. And so we're going to take a look at these different biomes in this talk: the tropical rainforest, the savanna. We're going to take a look at the temperate forests, also the taiga or the boreal forest. And you have also the desert down here. As you can see, it's got really high temperature, but low precipitation. And then you have areas like we have the area I live in is actually a modification of the temperate forest. It's a Mediterranean scrub forest, and that's in California. So much of California would be right around here. And you have the tundra also. We'll take a look at the tundra as well. All right, so biomes are made when organisms come in, and essentially the first organisms that inhabit the area are called pioneer species. So if you have a new island pops out of the Pacific Ocean, if you have an area that was totally ravaged by fire and then life starts coming back in, then it's the pioneer species that come in first and the pioneer species that inhabit those areas. So in the graphic, one of the really good ones is a lichen. Lichen is a symbiotic relationship between algae and fungi. And if you've been hiking in the Pacific Northwest and cooler regions of California, you often come across lichen. And so it looks like moss. Some people call it moss, but it's not. But as you can see in the picture, you have mosses and lichens. If you've ever seen a road that no longer gets used or a parking lot that's in a business that closed down 30 years ago, you're going to see some weeds pop out. Well, weeds are examples of pioneer species, so that is a good thing. And then we have others that are listed here in the graphic, but those are some really good ones, some really good pioneer species. Then what happens is, as the pioneer species go on and go through their life cycle, they alter the immediate environment, and they change the environment just to a point where it becomes more suitable for different organisms, a different mix of organisms, a different mix of plants, and then the animals are attracted to certain plants. So this happens for a long, long time. As you can see from the bottom of the graphic, it could happen for hundreds and hundreds of years. And as the environments start to change and have a different mix of flora and fauna, we call that actually ecological succession or primary succession. So that's what you see here. And then the trees that you would expect to have in that type of environment, that's called the climax community. So for each of the biomes today, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the location, the non-living characteristics or the abiotic characteristics. Then we'll take a look at the larger biotic characteristics. That includes plants and animals. And then from an ecology point of view, we'll take a look at some threats today to each of those biomes. I'm not going to consider biomes that are aquatic. Some would say that those aren't biomes, those are aquatic ecosystems. And I would tend to agree with that. I teach marine biology and oceanography as well. So in those classes, it's the other way around. We take a look at aquatic ecosystems, but I hardly get into biomes. But In this talk, I want to take a look at just the land areas, not the aquatic areas. Except the last one we're going to see is some people consider it to be aquatic, but we'll take a look at it and see what you think. So let's take a look at for each of these biomes that are considered here. Some of these are divided up into two different ones here, like this is the temperate forest, which includes some temperate forests that get more rain, like for example, in Western Washington State. There actually is a temperate forest that has a lot of rainfall, and some people say that this is the one of the only rainforests that is in the United States, or at least the continental United States. Parts of Hawaii are considered to be to have a rainforest biome. But my point right now is that sometimes two of these are coming together. So this is also temperate seasonal forest and temperate rainforest. Sometimes we lump together temperate forests. Okay, and then right here we have different types of deserts. So here's the subtropical desert. I live near the Mojave Desert, but my sister often hops on a plane and goes to Las Vegas. And Nevada, most of Nevada is considered to be a cold desert. It's much higher, the temperature is lower, but they do have a limited amount of precipitation. So for each of these biomes, we're going to take a look at the location, the abiotic, non-living characteristics, and the larger biotic characteristics, the plants and animals, and then threats from this. So let's get started. All right, first the tropical rainforest. The tropical rainforest, you can see on the map of the world right here, you can see in the darker green color is where you expect to have tropical rainforest. This is the Amazon basin right here. There's Western Africa, then here's Indonesia, Southeast Asia, parts of the Philippines right there. So the tropical rainforest, Earth's most complex land biome. The soil in a tropical rainforest is actually not even that good. So it's surprising to me that you have all these different mixes of plants. Well, what it is that although the soil doesn't have nutrients in them, the plants have a lot of nutrients locked up into the plants. So in the 1990s, what they would do in South America is they would burn patches of tropical rainforest, and they take the ashes and dig them back into the ground, then mix them into the soil, and then the nutrients from the plants were now in the soil, and they were able to grow some crops. But that didn't last long, 2-3 years, and then they'd have to go. They were going to continue doing it. They'd have to go to a different part of tropical rainforest and do it all over again. Tragic, I know. That was called the slash and burn technique. And after a while, we were able to catch them by looking at satellite images, and you see large pieces of the tropical rainforest burning. Of course, there's smoke and stuff, but you know, if there's no one there to report it, how are you gonna know? All right, so let's go and take a look at the tropical rainforest in a little bit more detail. It says your location found near the equator, little variation in temperature, no distinct seasonal changes. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. You take a look at some trees in the tropical rainforest, and you take a look at the cross section of their stems. One thing that you don't see, that you might be used to seeing, or you would expect to see, is tree rings, and that's because tree rings are a result of seasonal changes in precipitation primarily. And so you from a tropical, from a temporal rainforest or temporal forest or a deciduous forest, you can see that those trees have different times of the year when they get a lot of water and not as much water, not a lot of water, and then just you have different times of the year when you have different precipitation patterns. So those result in tree rings, and the study of tree rings is called dendrochronology. Well, that doesn't happen in tropical rainforests and a lot of big plants. So That's kind of interesting. All right, here's some abiotic factors of tropical rainforest. High biodiversity and biomass. That means you have a lot of different organisms in a small area. For some frogs in tropical rainforest, in this square mile, this is the only place where this particular species of frogs exists in the world, in a small patch of the tropical rainforest. So there are plenty of species where that's the case. And that's why the number of animals, for example, is not known. It's projected, but we currently have named about 1.6 million different types of animals. But some people say there are 5 billion different types of individual species here on Earth. Back to the PowerPoint, we have hot and moist, the abiotic factors, ideal for bacteria and other microorganisms. Very little topsoil, so the soil is not very rich. And 100 inches of rainfall per year. Just depends on what part specifically of the tropical rainforest you're at. And sometimes it gets up to 450 centimeters per year. Remember, an inch is 2.54 centimeters per inch. So when this graphic says there's 100 inches, well, that's a 250 inches, well, 250 centimeters of water a year, you can imagine. That's pretty crazy. Right, here's some plants, some photos of some plants, bougainvillea, bamboo, found in the tropical rainforest. You have sunlight, since sunlight is a major limiting factor. And how could that be if you're in tropical rainforest and you're at the equator where the sun is shining? Well, what's happening is that you have different levels of plants. And so you have some plants that are very tall and they create a canopy over tropical rainforest. So the plants that live at the very bottom of the forest and don't grow very tall, they may have some trouble getting the right amount of light. So that's what the second layer says. Your second bullet, plants grow in layers. Plants in the tropical rainforest typically have shallow, wide roots, and soil is so thin and poor in nutrients. And so they're going to have roots that go out to the side. Those are called lateral roots. Whereas in some other areas, like in the boreal forest we're about to get to, some plants have one big root that goes all the way down, hundreds and hundreds of feet to get to the water table and suck up some water. But you don't have water as a problem in the tropical rainforest. The problem is that you may or may not have the right amount of light. Because believe it or not, there's so many plants in the tropical rainforest that, that there's a lot of shade at the very bottom. Here's some animal adaptations to tropical rainforests, and many animals are specialists and require special habitat components to survive. Camouflage is common, protective coloration, also warning coloration. And some frogs is another example. And so here's some animals, pictures of animals that live in the tropical rainforests. Right, many symbiotic relationships between animals in tropical rainforest and different organisms live in different levels of the canopy of the tropical rainforest. As you know, the tropical rainforests are threatened. Severe human strip the rainforests for uses including logging and cattle ranching, and sure, a little bit of growing crops, but like I said, the soil isn't that rich anyway, so these may be more productive. In addition to the plants and animals that are displaced by this destruction, though, entire civilizations of people are also without a home. So, like in Brazil, people had to move out of the tropical rainforest and move into cities, and that's not really what we wanted to do with the native peoples, but that's what happened in history. Okay, and you can help by promoting sustainable use of rainforest products. All right, so that's a tropical rainforest. Let's take a look at the next one. The next one is where most people live. It's the temperate deciduous forest. And it's found in temperate zone, about 48 degrees north latitude. If you take a look here, that's 1530 and 45. So then when you look over here, that is where most people live. Look, there's the eastern United States, there's Europe, there's China and Korea. There's Japan right there. Most people live right about there. So that's the temperate forest, but this is called the deciduous forest. Sometimes in your biology textbooks, deciduous means that it's able to lose their leaves. These plants are, and so here's some abiotic factors that need to be dealt with in the deciduous forest, characterized by an abundance of deciduous trees, leaf-bearing trees that thinks the leaves are going to drop at certain times of the year. And we have deep soil layers with rich, that are rich in nutrients, precipitation pattern, 30 to 100 inches per year. But that includes all different types of precipitation, not just rain, but also snow. So, much of the population lives there and is familiar with snow. So here are some plant adaptations for plants that live in the deciduous forest. And here are some examples. Here's some photos of some examples. I used to have a white birch tree in my backyard, but it died during the pandemic. It died during the pandemic, but it really died because of the California droughts. And I didn't do a good job of watering that particular tree. So now I have a blank spot in my backyard. So that is the white birch tree. You can see there are others here that are listed. And it says here more diversity in the deciduous forest versus the coniferous forest. And we'll see that coming up. And that's because there's more light in this area. Trees adapt to varied climate by becoming dormant in the winter. Like I said, these guys will lose their leaves and basically metabolically, they won't die, but they'll turn down. And we have much fewer metabolic needs. Won't need as much water. They won't be making, going through photosynthesis and making a bunch of foods. They'll go dormant. So deciduous forests grow in layers. More sunlight reaches the ground compared to a rainforest. So you find more ground dwelling plants in the deciduous forest when compared to the tropical rainforest. Because it's surprising when you walk into a tropical forest how bare it is at the ground level. Okay. Those are the plants and then animals that live in tropical in the deciduous forest. Just showing you several different examples. But animals in the temperate deciduous forest may lose their winter coat, but they are adapted to many different seasons because there are 4 seasons in the deciduous forest, and they may go to different levels of the forest in order to feed. Okay. All right. So what about the temperate deciduous forests or just the deciduous forests? How do we take care of them? Well, many forests are cleared to provide housing for humans, as you saw from the graphic. Most of the population lives in this area. Careful use of the resource can provide a renewable system if, big if, we don't take too much away from the habitat. So that's a deciduous forest. Let's go to the next one, which is north of us. Again, I'm in California. This is the taiga. In biology textbook, the more common term for this is the coniferous forest. It's also called the boreal forest. It's also called by biologists the spruce moose belt. If you take a look at the graphic here, you can see that it goes all the way across Canada and across Russia, like that. And this is, if you go and look through, that's where moose live, and this is where the spruce tree lives. And there is nothing comparable in the southern hemisphere. There's only the northern hemisphere, and we have the coniferous forests. So here are some abiotic factors for the coniferous forest. Winters are long. If you picture, so many of you have traveled to Canada, and you may be familiar with this. Winters are long and cold, averages 100 inches of precipitation per year, mostly snow. And so we often visit my mother-in-law in Eastern Washington, which is approaching that area. And soil poor in nutrients and very acidic, and the growing season very short. I visited Alaska one time, actually a whole summer. And we left the day that school was out, and we came back the day before school was started. And we spent the whole summer going through Canada and spending a few weeks in Alaska, and then coming back down. But yeah, we went to the state fair in Alaska, saw some really huge pumpkins. They grow very quickly because there is a very short growing period, but because they grow so quickly, they get so big too. So here are some adaptations of fireweed. It's all over the place in Canada, especially I remember the Yukon that was filled with fire trees as far as you could see. Coniferous trees are what you consider to be Christmas trees, maybe. They are needle-bearing trees. They have long roots. They have long roots because their environments are often windy and harsh, and so they need to anchor the plant. Needles are actually leaves that are modified, and they are green, so they go through photosynthesis. They're not nice and flat and big and green like you would see in a tropical rainforest. So they're still leaves though. And so when the snow gets on the plant and it doesn't stay on the flat part of the leaf and break it off, so hopefully the snow will not clump up and will have an easier time falling to the ground without breaking the needles. And low sunlight and poor soil keeps plants from growing on the forest floor. Yeah, so when you go hiking, you can see this as you go up a hill or a mountain, even in California, you can see the as you go in and rise in latitude from the equator, you see a similar kind of progression as you go up a mountain. So you'll see some of these areas looking kind of like that, and as you go up the mountain, you'll know that there's more clearance on the ground, so then you can enjoy your hiking. So these are the plant adaptations for the taiga. Let's take a look at the animal adaptations. They adapt for cold winters, burrow, hibernate, warm coat, insulation. The study of behaviors called etiology. So sometimes ecologists and animal zoologists, physiologists will study these different behaviors and physiological adaptations that animals have when they live in different areas. And so that is the taiga. The taiga is also threatened. Mining operations can irreparably damage this fragile ecosystem. Population left behind, pollution left behind, and also put animals and plants at risk. Pollution from those mining operations. Lots of taiga. Let's see. Remember at the coniferous forests made of conifers, which are evergreen trees that have needles. So you've ever been north of Vancouver when you go to Canada? And I said the fireweed plants are everywhere, but there's such a carpet of evergreen trees that's just as far as you can see. And it's almost unimaginable. And see how many trees are in those parts of Canada. So hope you get to go visit sometime if you've never been. All right, so these are the savannas. If you take a look at the world map, you can see savannas are the yellow maps, typically very close to the desert areas. but you can see a lot of Australia, and then right south of the Sahara Desert, you have these savanna areas. The savanna areas found in the tropics near the equator. Amount of precipitation supports tall grasses, but only occasional trees. If you remember from your youth, the movie like The Lion King, this is a familiar area. Alrighty, some abiotic factors that we want to consider: a lot of rain, less than a tropical rainforest, but a lot of rain, and a lot of extreme changes in temperature. So it says here rainy and dry seasons and fires. So plants need to be adapted to that. They need to be able to trap a lot of light in a way and be able to support other animals living on it. These guys also have thorns, which are adapted leaves, just like the needles are, like a spine on a cactus. These will protect from predation or grazing from animals like antelopes and things like that. So those are some plant adaptations. You can see here they grow in tubs, resistant to drought. Many plants have thorns and sharp leaves. Okay, let's take a look at the animal adaptations. You can see it says adapt for short rainy seasons, so they migrate. And limited food leads to vertical feeding. So they reproduce during rainy seasons, ensure that more of the young survive. So you can see you have zebras, baboons. My son is a zookeeper and takes care of zebras and some livestock animals that are similar to zebras. Threats to tropical savanna. Invasive species, changes in fire management because of their low elevation. Some savannas are threatened by minor rises in sea level associated with climate change. Sure, that's true, but the other first two are probably more important than even that last one. So some animals are getting wiped out because you have other animals coming in that are suited for the environment, but not naturally found in those environments, and those are called invasive species. All right. So in the United States, we have prairies, and let's see, there are different areas of the world that have similar areas, but these are all grasslands. Okay, so here are just some information about the prairies. Sod-forming grasses that won't dry out or blow away in the wind. Some plant adaptations, animal adaptation, many adaptations to survive extremes in temperature and precipitation. However, remember, the prairie is just an example of a grassland. So I would encourage you to know the characteristics of a grassland in general, but understand that in the United States, the grassland is the prairie. There's which we'd see in the grassland. Another grassland is the chaparral, which is where I am. If you take a look over here at the picture right here, what you see in the world map is that the very few areas that have the chaparral region, and it's right there in California, here on the Iberian Peninsula, Portugal and Spain, right there. Also a little part of South Africa right there, Chile right there as well, and then a little part of Australia over here, where you might see the chaparral regions, and they all are very very nice places to live. As far as temperature goes, why everyone wants to move to California, right? And why people don't want to leave California is because of the weather. Primarily in coastal regions. My wife wants a beach house, right? And doesn't everyone? coastal areas with Mediterranean climates, which, right now is, when I turn it off on the computer, but it's like, it's just about 70, 72, 73 degrees here in May. So it's a nice day, 30 degrees north and south of the equator. Let's take a look at their characteristics. Chaparrals has abiotic factors that are important here, and see, so you can see how similar these guys are. The Mediterranean chaparral, here's the chaparral of the here in California, the typical California backdrop. If you go to college around here, you may even be able to take a class. At one of my colleges, we have a field work class where you go out and experience the chaparral itself. I know at one of the local universities, at Cal State Northridge, there's a class on chaparrals, and so we study that here in California. Climate: hot, dry summers, mild, wet winters. Okay, so see slight variations in seasonal temperatures. As I said, it's a favorable place to live as far as weather goes. Some plant adaptations you can see here: low-lying shrubs, small trees, leathery leaves, oils to resist fire. Fire will take out the weaker plants that don't belong. Certainly have a lot of fires here in California, and then here's some animals that live in the chaparral region. You can see especially that aardwolf right there, but somewhat camouflaged to avoid predation. And many animals will change their diet as the season changes, like from that puma there. Threat to the chaparral: human development, as we said, very desirable climate for humans to live in. The chaparral region, along with the aquatic ecosystem called the estuary, many of those areas just getting paved over and building buildings and houses, and a lot of these areas are just going to human habitation. All right, so one of the last ones we're going to take a look at is the desert. You have different locations in the world. Over here, it's near me. We have the Mojave Desert, and the Borrego Desert is down here. This is a cold desert, which is Nevada. You have the Sahara Desert there. You have different regions in the world. Look at Australia. And of course, if you have some friends or relatives or veterans, they will tell you all about the area, which is Saudi Arabia, Iran, Afghanistan. Those areas very, very much undesirable compared to the chaparral region, because it's the desert. Desert, less than 10 inches per year of rain, little to no topsoil. It's very windy in the desert, and what happens is sometimes the soil will get passed around, and actually grains of sand and will get picked up by the wind and hit other grains of sand and cause them to go up. So it's not unusual to have wind storms, dust storms in the desert. The minerals are not too deep in the soil, and it's too dry or decay. Things just don't rot. Deserts, while there are many types of deserts, they all share one characteristic: they are the driest places on Earth, which is true, but there's one more biome which is also pretty dry. We'll get that in a second. All right, here's some desert adaptations. This is the ocotillo plant and the joshua tree. Both are found near me in California. There's actually one in the national park, as many of you know, the Joshua Tree National Park. And the ocotillo is a plant that has the flowers every once in a while, and it's very quickly makes a flower, and then birds come and visit the flower, birds and bees, insects, and they pollinate the flower just in a very short time span of the year. Spines, succulents, thick, waxy cuticle, shallow, broad roots. That's some adaptations. Those are some adaptations to often found in desert plants. Of course, there's a cactus, which has the modified leaf known as a spine to minimize predation. So we do desert plants. I actually, back to the Ocotillo, I actually used to write questions for the California State Science exam. And one of my questions had to do with this plant, the Ocotillo. And that's how I knew about the flowering and pollination of the Ocotillo, because my question had to do with that. All right, animals that live in a desert, here's some adaptations they must have: get water from food. In fact, they said that kangaroo rats don't need to drink ever. If you give them water, they will drink, but they don't need to drink because they can get enough water from their food. And as they sit in the burrow, the atmosphere, the air in the burrow will have a slightly higher relative humidity than the desert air. So the moisture, little moisture that's in the air will go into the food, and then they get then the animals will eat the food and will have a little bit more water in it than you would expect. So thick outer coat on animals that live in the desert, large ears to radiate the extra heat, and typically you have smaller animals because they have less surface area. So because of the surface to volume ratio, they have a less surface area, then they have less area to dissipate the heat from. So that's a good thing, adaptation for life in the desert in animals. Threats to the desert, Palm Springs, residential development. I can remember between Los Angeles and Las Vegas, there was a time when the traffic was okay. You can get there in 5 hours, and there was nothing in between, except you better get some gas and go to McDonald's in Barstow, California, because you're not going to see anything else except Zizix and the world's largest thermometer. Nowadays, if you would drive Las Vegas, is such a bad drive. Lots of traffic if you go during the wrong time. And there's all kinds of things in between now because people are actually living in these areas. Second one, off-road recreational activities destroy habitat for plants and animals. You should be careful, leave only footprints, but that too often doesn't happen. Some plants are removed by collectors, endangering the population, especially in the Sonoran Desert with cacti. That is a big problem. There's a national park in Arizona called the Saguaro National Park. And those are the trees. When you think of a cactus, you typically think of a cactus that has those arms that look like this. I know that in our family, we have a cactus we bring out during Christmas it's a cactus with a face and a Christmas hat on it, and it starts singing Christmas songs, Feliz Navidad, and like that. But anyway, those are typically you think of a saguaro cactus if you're taking a look at a cactus, and so we have to protect those guys with the national park, and it is illegal to pick those and put them in your yard because they are endangered species. All right, few left, I think. This is the tundra. Just take a look at this darker region at the very top, down north of the Arctic Circle. Tundra has permafrost. If you walk on it, years later, you can still see footprints. Less than 25 inches per year, temperature rarely higher than 10 degrees Celsius, in a very short growing season. Here's some adaptations to plants growing closer to the ground, having shallow roots to absorb the limited water resource, and trees grow less than 1 meter high. Wow. So that's some plant adaptation. to the tundra. And here's some more plant life that in the tundra. There's some examples of animal life in the tundra. And typically we do have larger areas as we go, or larger animals as we move toward the poles. And as you can see with that grizzly bear down there, we've ever seen one of those over 1,000 pounds on a bear. Very crazy. Like a reindeer also lives in the same area. Reindeer, the more common name for a reindeer is a caribou. I've never seen one of those. They migrate for not just hundreds of miles during the season, but they'll go over 1,000 miles in the tundra looking for food. So little competition in animals in the tundra region because who wants to live there? And so if you look up the Arctic fox, small ears, insulation, thick coat, and oil drilling. And over here, especially the tundra is slow to recover from damage. Like I said, you can see the footprints and the permafrost after a long time, still there. Fragile, of course, one of the most fragile biomes on the planet. All right, and then this maybe is not a biome. This is the polar region, and also known as a polar ecosystem, can be considered marine by some people. So in my marine biology class, we do study this as one of the marine ecosystems or aquatic ecosystems, because instead of having plants on the land, the plant life, the producers in the polar region are phytoplankton, which are small single-celled algae. And there's a difference between the Arctic and the Antarctic. The Antarctic is where the penguins live, and the Arctic is relatively shallow, lots of nutrients for a large variety of animals in the food web. People, seals, and polar bears are found in the Arctic region. Not a lot of people, but more so than the Antarctic region. And then this area, just like every other area on Earth, threatened by humans, reserves of minerals draw humans to these fragile ecosystems. Remember, these regions were different places during the geological history of the Earth, and so there are fossils in the Antarctic, and when they were in more temperate climates, and then as the continents moved because of plate tectonics, now you have some areas that where plants lived before, and with all the pressure moving and such, as the continents moved, and you still have different oil reserves that are not readily available, but now people are starting to get those. So threats to polar ecosystems. All right, and then main threat to wildlife has been to the increase in tourism with garbage left behind. You know that my wife always takes plastic containers and cuts them up, so small, to make sure that a bird can't get its head stuck in a piece of garbage that we threw out. All right. Well, those are the biomes, and I hope you learned something great today. And I'm Mr. Vallejo. Thanks for listening to the biome lecture, and we will see you very soon. Have a great day.
Why, thank you for class. Have a great week.
Yeah, no problem.